I would like to ask, is this because your position actually is against the big farm drug empire? So I think this is the fundamental problem that we have to struggling with. Yeah, what do you think?
Yes, I think that's the underlying problem. At the same time, we just showed the film in Switzerland, which I always call the belly of the beast, because Switzerland is one of the centers of pharmaceutical production in the world. And in Basel and in Zurich, where we showed the film, the cinemas were sold out. The people, Rehema came, the Ugandan protagonist who is a herbalist. She came with me on this tour, and the people were, and we brought Artemisia plants to give out to the people, so that they can also learn a little bit about, get a connection to something like such a powerful healing plant. And the people were very, very interested. And one doctor I met on this tour said 80% of the Swiss want alternative or complementary medicine. They don't want the Western medicine anymore. So I think this is really what is behind this, why people are so scared of this film. Because that's basically what we are saying. Let the people have local solutions for their problems and let them own their own health. That's what we are saying in the film. And I think the markets, especially in the global south, are gigantic, especially for diseases that are there year round. And that's a market that they don't want to lose. I think that's what's behind the censorship in Uganda.
Kikok has questions. Yeah, please.
I don't have a question. It's simply that I would like to add, and a few remarks to show the ironic twist of history. Now, that Artemisinin actually is derived from a plant, which is Artemisia, I think it's called. And it was actually during the Vietnam War, when the soldiers were dying from a lot of malaria, that that I think Mao Zedong was appealed to help. And so Mao Zedong then sent word down to the researchers, both in Chinese medicine as well as in modern Western medicine, to see what they can do to help. So there was a team of Chinese medical researchers led by Tsui, who then flipped through all the books on Chinese medical texts, and they found in a text of an alchemist stroke chemist, I suppose, because the beginnings of chemistry or modern chemistry actually was based on alchemy, right? And so this was an alchemist in the old days called Ho. And in his text, there is a reference to this herb called Artemisia, Herba annua, something or other. I can't remember the total botanical name for it. So the team then worked on it and then extracted the active ingredient from the plant and called it Artemisinin, for which in 2015, that team, Tsui is still alive, and got the Nobel Prize. Now, Tsui herself is quite clear as to what she was doing. And in fact, in her writing, since she got the Nobel Prize, she made it absolutely clear that probably this wouldn't do, because taking out the active ingredient from a plant is asking for trouble. So she recommended what may be called combination therapies, because the pathogen can very quickly adapt and evolve to resist the medicine, the chemical involved. So by using combination therapies, they hope to retard the evolution and to produce less resistance. So by the time Tsui and her team got the Nobel Prize, ironically, the pathogen the malaria pathogen had already got the better of the drug, and there were, resurgence of malaria in it. So that is why it just shows, how some traditional medicine have to be taken in their own right. You cannot just simply extract the active ingredient and put it in a neat form, feed it to the ill, and hope that it will do, forevermore to do the job of curing people. So I would just like to add that it seems to me to be a very ironic twist of medical history and the philosophy of pharmacology and medicine.
Yes, and actually, she's one of the stars in our film. I interviewed her, you too, and she's in the film. So if you want to watch,
I would like to see your film.
You have to watch it. It's called The Fever. And yes. I actually came across the subject in Vietnam because I was at my brother's wedding in Saigon. And I read in my travel book that the Vietnamese had artemisia during the Vietnam War. And that was most probably the reason that they won the war, while the American soldiers were dying because of the resistance of their drugs. So that's my starting point for this film. But let me also say something that you two told me in the interview that I did with her. This was before she got the Nobel Prize. And she said, because in 1982, she presented this solution to the West, to the WHO, and as a solution for malaria in Africa. And they refused in 1982 because, of course, they had their own drugs that they wanted to sell to Africa. So it took 30 years for them to accept artemisinin as a malaria drug in a combination therapy, and it took 40 years for them to acknowledge her contribution in the Nobel Prize. 40 years. And I asked her what she thought about this time lag. Well, 30 million people had to die, and she said if the reason was I don't know by word, but something about if it was about profits, that the pharmaceutical industry wanted to make the profits, and that's why so many people had to die, that this was a real shame. That's what she said. But again, she also warned about the 3-day, the ACTs are only given usually 3 days. And even in these old texts that they found, which are 2,000 years old, it says already you have to take it Qing Shao. How do you say Artemisia in Chinese? Qing Shao. Something like that. Qing Hao, yeah. You have to take it 7 days. If you don't take it 7 days, the parasite can get used to cannot be eliminated and can get used to the drug. So already 2,000 years ago, they knew this, and we ignore this old wisdom and knowledge, and but yes, I was very fortunate to meet Professor Yu too. She's still in the lab every day at 84 years old or 85. She's now
quite old. Yes, I love to see that film. Thank you for drawing my attention to it.
We got the copy. If Katharina, and now we will to invite other panelists. Do you have any questions? And
yes, well, Professor Budiman, I am just a little bit. I want to ask for some clarification, really. Given your findings, and you said earlier on that they were people who are of relatively low education background. Now, would you read into that a thought which has occurred to me, which may be all wrong in the light of what you might have to say, And that is, it seems to me that there may be two types of people who show resilience, if not resistance, to modern Western medicine in their daily, in the use of medicine, choosing what is the first medicine. First of all, money apart, right? But you said that they were all covered by insurance anyway, and so money was not the problem. So, which is good. Then it seems to me, then there are two types of people. Now, am I right in saying this? One type is when the person is of less with less educational background, then they tend to accept traditional knowledge much more than people with a slightly higher educational background, because they are less exposed to modern education anyway, right? And then right at the other extreme are those, I hate to say people like myself, but with more education, who might have reassessed what modern education means, it's the background to it all, and also to understand the limitations, and not to reject modern Western. I mean, this is daft and silly to reject it, because there are many, many contexts where it will be very sensible and rational to use modern Western medicine, but every medicine has its own limitations and constraints. So for certain purposes, then somebody like me, if you use me as an example of someone with more than elementary education, to then go back to traditional forms of medicine. So it is really in between these two extremes that you find people who are the most enthusiastic about dropping traditional knowledges and then opting for the most modern variety of epistemology that might be going. Is there any truth in what I say, or am I, got the wrong end of the stick?
We make perfect sense what you said, and so let me clarify again. So in terms of formal education, yes, as I explained, most the highest level of education is high school. Some even has only elementary school. However, if you talk to them, then you have this very convincing sense that they are educated. Not in the formal sense, but they know what they do. They know how to make the right decision, and they learn from other means, which is not school. Because of their activism, because of their involvement in the growth of the community. This is particularly true in Marquisa and Timone outside Jakarta. Whereas in Cikini and Pompa, it is quite observable that most of the initiatives, even in terms of their everyday life, still mostly lie with men rather than with women. Why? Because because of their location in the city, within the urban center, the everyday challenge is tougher. They have to deal with drugs dealing. They have to deal with crime, which is definitely higher than in the peri-urban area. And that is probably why men are basically more dominant. And we also notice that Western medicine is more easily available in the two kampungs located in Jakarta, compared to the two kampungs outside Jakarta. Well, there are chemists where they can buy drugs, but not like in their alley or nearby. Whereas in Cikini and in Pompa, they have like street vendors selling Western drugs in addition to candies, cookies, and so on, and toys. So, but you're right. What you said, that makes sense. That it may not be sharply divided, but somewhere in the middle. That is where the dynamic is. So thank you so much. I think that is very enlightening for me and for my research group, Kiko. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to follow up again later with you, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Fine.
First, what I would like to say, the center of the work we are doing, as I said before, is the right of self-determination of women. What do they want? If they want to be mother or not, it's completely respectable. We need to respect it, and that they need to have access to this condition to be mother or not. And if they want to, they have to be able to choose the best conditions to labor. If they want to go to a hospital or clinics, it's obviously all right. And inside of our center, we are choosing this condition to better the condition into the hospitals for women to labor, because this medical system has to soften the characteristic, like OEMs. Because we know that our countries in Latin America, it's really hard. We are conscious that lots of women needs, but not the majority of them.
But we have to do everything to accompany these women so that most of them can do this. I don't know if maybe I am a romantic of natural childbirth. Maybe I am. I speak from my own experience. I speak from the experience of all the childbirths that I have accompanied over the last 8 years. And one thing that we do have to do is decolonize statistics. That means that, for example, in my country, which is Colombia, which is not the reality from which I am speaking of right now, but there are many midwives that are organized, and midwifery has been organized in the last years in an impressive way. One thing that happens is that they do not allow them to register the babies that they accompany, of whose births they accompany. So we have numbers, statistic numbers of institutionalized childbirth, which are biased. They are biased because they show that this is institutionalized childbirth, but there is a percentage there of childbirth where they have been accompanied by either by midwives, but they have to go to the hospital and they have to register those births in the hospital. So they are registered as if they had taken place in the hospital. So we really don't know, according to the data, the reality of what is going on. And when women, and this happens a lot, sometimes we say that women die when they reach the hospital. No, they die when they receive no assistance from anybody, or because now they tend to blame midwives, while what I have seen in the communities is that they do their job. Most of them do their job so well that really most of them have never witnessed maternal birth. We cannot say the same from the health workers. All health workers always see maternal birth or neonatal deaths, maternal death or neonatal deaths. And when you ask the midwives, they say that they never had deaths, and they have accompanied the whole process in an integral, comprehensive way. And this, I thought this was beautiful in terms of bringing this example, because there is a vertical birth that we achieved here, this law, so that they didn't force women to be lying down on their backs in order to give birth, which is really anti-natural, because we need verticality, we need gravity in order to give birth more easily. But what they do is that they take this practice that is ancestral from all the peoples of the world, and they take her to the hospital. They take them to the hospital. And this is a law that does not mention midwives. It's a law that says, that accepts that women take some medicine, some herbal remedies, and this has to do with another policy that has been very interesting, but it had several problems in implementation. But sometimes we take out of context a certain practice, as Kikok was saying just now. We take the active ingredient out of a plant, as she was saying, and we think that this is enough. So we use this plant and that's it. And we forget that traditional medicine is absolutely integral, it's comprehensive. Midwives not only work with the plants, it has to do with the accompaniment, with the affection, with the singing, with fire, with a nest that they construct to make this birth be different. And on the other hand, I also think that maybe I am a bit of a romantic in the way that I think, or in what I want, that women to have the best births possible. And that's what we work towards. We strive for this, not only at home, also at the hospital or at the clinic, when that's what they want, of course. But I feel that that's what we should tend to, that's what we should strive for, that women are happier, increasingly happier. And for those of them who are not able to achieve this, well, that there are women that can accompany this process, so they can accompany with the processes of rearing a child when they have not been able to accompany during a birth. This is what I want to say. In fact, there are numbers that are never made public, has to do with the rates of births at home are very, very high in terms of what is achieved. Oh, sorry, in the birthing homes, not birth at home, but birthing homes. What we say is we give them the chance with all the safety. They are able to have natural births in these birthing homes. We have high rates of births in birthing homes. And what do we say? What is going on here? I feel that we have to construct better articulations, because now the idea is that midwives do all the births. No, of course not. We need to have intercommunication. We need to respect and generate dialogues and communication to take what is best from each system, because women also want to be respected in their cosmology and in their ancestral way of giving birth, in our ancestral way of giving birth, and how this medical system can help this to be respected, but also taking what is best from a dominant Western medicine as well. This is all what I wanted to say. I think we also have to revise these statistics, because there are many stories and many statistics that are not correctly constructed. For example, mortality in birth homes is very, very low, and they hardly ever talk about this.
Yeah, and we also have a question for Luna. This is a question from Chinese audience. Yeah, yeah, I liked the speech about the power of women and the solidarity and the solidarity of women around childbirth. And sorry. And sorry, I repeat again. I liked the speech about the power of women and the solidarity of women around childbirth. Could you please describe further, other than childbirth, whether there are other areas that can allow women to be in touch again with nature and community. Furthermore, I would like to hear your views on feminism.
In general, this connection with nature, we could find it in different ways. The moment of giving birth is privileged for this, both for men and for women, because it's a moment of physical transformation, emotional transformation, spiritual transformation as well, that also makes us prepare to receive a new being, and that is really life-changing. So it's a privileged moment to connect each other, to connect with nature. But there are many forms and moments to do this, and in the way that we work from the feminist popular education, it also has to do with recovering our cosmologies, this connection that we have with territories, understanding that what happens to our territories also is the way in which patriarchy relates to our bodies. It expropriates from us the decision making. It's the same thing that capitalism does when it expropriates territories from the peoples because they have interests in relation to mining, oil drilling, etc. Thinking about pillage as the way of connecting with, relating to nature. It's the same thing that they do with us as women. And when we do this connection in popular feminist education with women, it's amazing to see how that in order to think about the self-determination of our bodies and how we can generate sovereignty, do with the connections that we make with sovereignty in our territories and sovereignty of our cosmologies. And also it entails understanding the relationship with our partners, how this relationship with motherhood has been constructed, and recovering, rescuing what is the best from the past, but also to question it and decide how we want to continue walking. And feminisms are very diverse. This is what I can tell you. In Latin America, fortunately, from popular feminisms and community feminisms, ecofeminisms, Black feminisms, we have a variety of perspectives, and we have a lot of things to say from all these different perspectives. We also have feminisms for good living, and all of them are different ways of seeing ourselves from each territory and from the place that women has occupied historically in these places, and how we see oppression of women, and how we consider that we should build better relationships between men and women in the world without forgetting what we want to continue maintaining of our own cosmologies and our lives. It also has to do with liberation and emancipation, but from our knowledge, and in this way of also constructing sisterhood. So I feel that there's something very positive there on all these feminist movements, is understanding that we are diverse, and also understanding that this intersectionality is one of the paths through which we must walk, understand that we have multiple oppressions, class, gender, race, age, and from there we have a lot to work on in order to relate to others, male and female. And from there is where we co-construct from this diversity. And that's what we do in GAFA. That's what we do, of course.
I have a question for Lucia. And in Brazilian context, how about the indigenous make use of herbal or traditional medicine to deal with the pandemic? Because although their situation is very bad, and how can they resist this kind of bad situation?
No Brasil,
Well, in Brazil, the traditional medicines are very not considered in the traditional Occidental. There are superstitious, considered superstitious. However, the major part of Brazilians uses the traditional medicines in different ways. In pandemic, I believe I didn't did this study, a deep study of to know in terms of numbers how was that, because we know that the tea, the herbs is a very everyday lives is very common. I think this doesn't change during the pandemics, because I think there was some exaggerations of thinking that the people were humanized for treating COVID. So the plants that they have this effect of protecting from COVID. We think, we don't know. Some parts of the trees or little trees, they produce chloroquine. They were used to malaria. And then was this inversion and false news that hydroxychloroquine was have efficiency to protect against coronavirus. It's not true that we don't have comprovided studies to follow this indication, because the healthy care elaborate a protocol, but not related to traditional medicine. In other hand, this hydroxychloroquine was produced in the labs, in the chemistry labs. The Brazilian population doesn't know in what to believe in relationship with this, with the use of hydroxychloroquine, because it's not, we don't have comprobations about the efficiency. Because there were some people that believe in the efficiency of the hydroxychloroquine. The people had the virus and they used the hydroxychloroquine to treat coronavirus, but I think there was we have this psychological feeling that we are treated properly. So it's very hard to talk about this, because I still don't have this evaluation, but I am sure there is chloroquine is not the best because it's used to malaria. There is an active ingredient that's in some plants from the woods. They have efficiency just in malaria, but I don't have this evaluation, a concrete evaluation about this, about the use of medicine, traditional medicine against COVID in pandemic.
Yo creo que este diálogo ha sido bien importante para recuperar los saberes.
This inquest was really important to prove the interaction with women and the traditional medicine and this dialogue between science.
Ancestrales de los pueblos que nos ayudan. Yo me recordé que mi bisabuelo.
I remembered that my grandfather was a healer and my grandmother learned from him, and I also learned from him, not a lot, but I know that there are some plants that help to comfort the body, and this type of knowledge is sometimes lost, and it's important to recover it in a collective way. It's important to write books about this and to continue doing this in circles, in dialogue with more comrades in our territories. I know that also in the Amazon, there is a type of animal that is used for vaccination of people. This also it has to do with the food that we eat and with how we get together. And this also has to do with problematizing the system that we live in, the colonial, racist, patriarchal, capitalist system that many times ignores and excludes this type of knowledge that is necessary for our lives.